We beg of you, stop it, Martin.
Maybe something.
Okay, we're on. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning,
Rabbi.
Martin, you're live. Martin, you're live. We're all live, and we're making. Let's go. Okay. Mishna Psachim, Perik chapter 10, Mishna Dala Mishna. Mazgulai Kish. Misha, here's your second. Mazgulai Shani. They for him the second cup of wine. And here's when the son will ask his father the questions. The main ask then, and if there is, the son does not have enough intelligence to ask. Aviv Malamda, his father teaches him, and his father teaches him to ask his father. So here are the questions. Man ishtana halayla hazeh mikal halayla. From all other nights. So they explain here the reasons for the following 4 differences between this night and every other night of the year. We're going to list 4 differences. And the question is, why is that different? What are the reasons for the differences? All other nights we eat, whether it's, let it be chametz, let it be matzah, let it be leavened, let it be unleavened. Tonight, the only thing we can eat is matzah, right? No other forms of bread. That's question number 1. Question number 2. And all other nights we eat other vegetables. Tonight it's going to be the bitter vegetables. Now they point out here very interestingly. Hold on one second. So the way to read this, I'm sorry. So what this means is, again, we're reading it as we eat vegetables. Tonight we eat maror. Now tonight we eat other vegetables too, right? For karpas we had other vegetables. We could even have maror for karpas if we want to. We can even have lettuce for karpas. That was the example that's mentioned in the Mishnah. But the point is, all other nights we don't have any kind of obligation or mitzvah, any kind of specific vegetables, and tonight we have mitzvah specifically to eat maror. Next, now this one we're not so familiar with. All other nights we eat meat that is roasted, stewed, or cooked. But tonight, kulay tzali, only roast. Okay, so this is interesting. First of all, this is a question that we don't have nowadays because this is a question that relates to the Karban Pesach, to the Paschal sacrifice. The child is asking that tonight the meat that we eat has to be roasted. When we eat meat, it could be roasted, it could be stewed, it could be cooked, it could be whatever you want. You'll notice the word by matzah, it says kulay matzah, all matzah, which means only matzah. And here it says kulay tzali, all roasted, meaning only roasted. By maror, doesn't say only maror. Is that only maror? You eat other things too. Now, what's interesting, 2 points about this question. So a couple of points about this question. Number 1, we mentioned that this question is a question about meat. It's a question about the Karban Pesach. We don't have the Karban Pesach. We don't ask this question, right? It's not one of our 4 questions. Instead, we replace it with the fact that all nights we can eat in any manner that we want, whether it's reclining or not reclining. And tonight we have a mitzvah to eat reclining. That is a valid question nowadays because nowadays typically we don't recline. It's been one for a while like that, and therefore we replace the question by the Karban Pesach with a question about reclining. The last point that they bring out here is that it says it's all roasted. Now, if you're only in the Karban Pesach, it's only roasted. What about the Karban Chagiga? Right? We mentioned that the Karban Chagiga, that if you need extra meat, they able to fill up on because Karban Pesach won't be, the animal Karban Pesach won't be enough for that. So then you have this Karban Chagiga, that you have this extra carbon that you're eating from. Does it have to be roasted? Does the Karban Shalom have to be roasted? Well, according to this Mishnah, it does. The Tana of this Mishnah holds that the Chagiga offering was also roasted. Typically, a Shlomim doesn't need to be roasted, but this one that accompanied the Karban Pesach was roasted. And therefore, the wording of the Mishnah is kulay tzali, only roasted. Because even the Karban Chagiga, the Chagiga Yudala, the Chagiga brought together with the Karban Pesach, that was roasted, according to this opinion. Next. All other nights we dip once. Tonight we dip twice. Now you remember this is not the way we say it in the Haggadah. Because if you think about the words read, all nights we dip once. Really? All nights we dip once? Didn't we say yesterday that the reason why we start dipping vegetables at the beginning of the meal is because we don't do that? And the whole point is to arouse the curiosity of the children. And there, the Gemara asked this question, and the Gemara itself changed it. Instead of it says all other nights we only dip once, it has to read all other nights we don't even dip once. Which is how we say it. That's the Gemara's change. Okay, so there are 4 questions. According to the intelligence of the son, the father teaches. He's going to explain him and going to elaborate on the answer to the questions based on how well the child can understand. Okay, next. When we come to telling the story of Yetzias Mitzrayim, when we come to the mitzvah of telling the story of the Exodus from Egypt, there's a rule. Mascha b'gnus and Messiah b'shvach. We begin talking about the disgrace of the Jewish people, Messiah b'shvach, and we end with their glory. I'd like to see the words how they use it here. They use the word for gnus as disgrace, and shvach in their glory. Part of the story is to start off of how the Jewish people were in a very lowly state and now became close to Hashem. That is when we say in the Haggadah, Avodim hayinu l'far b'Mitzrayim. When we talk about when we were slaves, we're talking about how we went from slaves to freedom, which therefore at the end, as we say by the Haggadah, and now Hashem has brought us close to His worship. But the point is that we blew out those differences of the disgrace and then praise. The disgrace being that we mentioned that we were slaves and we were freed. We also mentioned, as we say, originally our ancestors were idol worshippers. For Avraham Avinu, we were idol worshippers, and therefore the point is that we should be, again, discussing these 2 points of disgrace for the Jewish people and how we were taken out of that and brought close to the service of Hashem. And then the Mishnah concludes, V'doirish marami abid avi at sheyigmar kol ha'parsha kula. And one expounds from the pasuk that reads, from the verse that reads, Arami, a man from Aram, wanted to destroy my father, referring to Lavan, Yaakov's father-in-law, until finishing that entire section. Now, these are 4 psukim that we find in Devarim, Chaf Vav, that's chapter 26, psukim Hey through El Ches, 5 through 8. It starts with the words Arami Ovid Avi, and I can't offhand remember the last words of how the whole thing ends. But the point is that these 4 verses are read as part of Seder, as part of the story of telling the Exodus from Egypt, and the Mishnah and the Mishnah says the Deutsch. Not only do we read them, we expound upon them, which is what we do in the Haggadah. The Haggadah does that for us, and you do that until the entire section is completed. Those 4 verses happen to be the verses that a person recites when they bring Bikurim, when they bring the first fruits. And they have to do the declaration by the Bikurim, which is thanking Hashem. There they go through this short synopsis of the history of the Jewish people, of starting from the situation of Yaakov with Lavan until Hashem took us out of Egypt. And the person who brings Bikurim mentions the fact that now we're in Eretz Yisrael. But those 4 psukim, which are, again, a synopsis of the history of the Jewish people that a person uses to express their gratitude when they bring the Bikurim, the first fruits, these 4 verses are part of our Seder, are part of our mitzvah of telling Yetzias Mitzrayim. Not only do we just recite those verses, but Deirish, we expound on them. Have a wonderful day and a wonderful Shabbos.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.